So, we got some AEW news to talk about, and a bit of WWE. First, let's get the WWE out of the way. It seems that they might finally be doing the Unification Tag Team title match this Friday on Smackdown on Fox. Now, whether or not they finally do go through with it, that's up to WWE. But I kind of find it ironic that, they're finally allowing it to happen, but it's going to happen on SmackDown. And that kind of tells me something about Fox. It tells me that Fox, even though they were against it originally, of happening at Backlash, I should say, I think the real reason they were against it happening wasn't because it was happening at Backlash. No. I think Fox was against it originally happening because it was being promoted more so on Monday Night Raw, a USA Network program, instead of on their program on their network. So I guess Fox probably worked something out if this does happen and said, hey, you want to do the unification? That's fine, but it's got to be promoted and it's got to happen here on SmackDown on Fox. So to me, it seemed that Fox basically just said, hey, you want it to happen, no problem, but it's happening on our show. The promoting for it happens on our show. End of story. And that's about it. And they probably even said whoever wins gets mostly seen on their show. But we'll see what happens. I know a lot of people are doubting whether or not they'll actually go through with it, but we'll see. Now, going on to some AEW news here, as we're approaching about almost 2 minutes in. So let's talk about some AEW news, some very interesting AEW news, as a matter of fact. First of all, Hikaru Shida. Hikaru Shida, the third women's champion in AEW history, and one of the longest women's champions in that company's history, alongside Britt Baker, apparently has been reported to be injured. In other words, she can't, because of said injury, she can't compete in the Owen Hart Classic for the women. What's funny, though, is Hikaru Shida went on to social media and even questioned this as well. With something along the lines of saying, injured? Really? That's news to me, since I've been doing 4 matches in a row here in Japan, as well as part of something musical-wise as well. And what that tells me is when you have Hikaru Shida coming out and acknowledging basically that she's not injured, as a matter of fact, that she's really competing in Japan, I'm assuming for Stardom, more so than anything, as well as doing something else, that does kind of hurt AEW's credibility in the eyes of some people. Because why would you go and basically say in front of the world on television and even promote it through social media, hey, Hikaru Shida, who was supposed to face Red Velvet in the quarterfinals of this women's division, this women's version of the women's tournament for the Owen Hart Cup, why would you say she can't compete when she herself is coming out and basically calling you out on it? Yeah. Very subtly, she's kind of calling them out by questioning, really? I'm injured? I didn't know that. And again, what that does in the eyes of a lot of people, especially the anti-AEW drones, and they know who they are, that pretty much fuels their fire, if you will. It fuels the fire of people that look at AEW as a great product, but maybe just a niche product that only has a very limited shelf life in the wrestling business. And it also fuels, more so than anything, the anti-AEW drones who feel that AEW is nothing more than a modern-day take on WCW or a modern-day hybrid take on WCW, ECW, and the fact that, to them, a lot of people that support it can't accept the fact that it too is a sports entertainment company. The only difference is they focus on the wrestling first and sports entertainment second. So yeah, basically with Hikaru Shida coming out and basically, exposing the truth about her injury, so to speak, to the world. Because basically they're playing it off as Serena Deeb, injuring her in that Philly street fight when that wasn't the case. The Philly street fight she had with Serena Deeb was her last match in AEW for the time because she had other commitments in Japan. So for her to be written off like that, obviously, I guess, I'm not saying it didn't sit well with her, but, for them to use that as an excuse to write her off of television and write her out of the tournament, for the Owen Hart Cup for the women. Again, like I say, caught her by surprise, and she responded the way she did. Now, I'm hoping and sure that Tony Khan, he loves to be on social media himself, and some of his people that work with him love to be on social media, and that's how they interact with the fans. I'm sure Tony Khan probably got wind of this and hopefully contacted her and said, look, I know that sounded wrong and I shouldn't have said that, but you had that match with Serena and we want to build Serena up, so we had to come up with an excuse with why you're not here and why you can't be in the women's portion of the Owen Hart Cup. But yeah, if I'm AEW and Tony Khan, next time I might want to stick to the truth. I might want to stick to the truth instead of having, people that I'm talking about being out with injuries or something else coming out and kind of countering that with saying, oh, I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And, oh, I was injured. I didn't know that, so yeah, hopefully, like I said, Tony Khan got in contact with her, explained the situation, and maybe on Dynamite this Wednesday when they get ready to do Red Velvet and Chris Statler, they'll come out and say, hey, they'll come out, they'll have Excalibur and JR and Shivani come out and say, hey, before this match gets started, we have to correct some information, some misinformation we got on Friday. Hikaru Shida is not injured. She's actually been competing in Japan, and her matches that she has scheduled there kind of interfere with her not being able to participate in the Owen. So that's why Chris Statlander is taking her place. So yeah, hopefully, like I said, Tony sees this, hears about this, gets in contact with her, and pretty much straightens things out, and maybe, like I said, corrects course on Wednesday by having the announcers kind of correct the information that they were fed or they were told to say about Hikaru Shida's status, and instead basically say they got misinformed and this was really going on. Hopefully. Because if not, again, this is not a good look for AEW, it's not a good look for Tony Khan, especially when it's coming from someone that apparently in the past has had issues for not being showcased on television as much as she was hoped for, or hoped to be, I should say, especially after being the first longest reigning women's champion in the company outside of Britt Baker. So hopefully this gets straightened out and everything. But yeah, Hikaru Shida, as of right now, despite what you hear on AEW Rampage, AEW Dynamite, social media, she's not injured. And you can even look it up on social media itself. Everybody's talking about it. Hikaru Shida is still actively competing. She's been doing matches in Japan, obviously, I think, as well as some other things, which is interfering with her wanting to be in this tournament. But who's to say she wouldn't have been able to make it anyway? She might have been able to make it, and, compete against Red Velvet. But I'm assuming, this is my opinion, I'm assuming that the reason they took her out wasn't because her schedule was conflicting and all that. Her schedule was conflicting with her commitments in Japan and all that. I think they did it because they knew on paper Hikaru Shida would have been the favorite to beat Red Velvet in advance. So they want to put Red Velvet in the ring against somebody that she has a chance against to allow herself to advance instead of the predicted, a very predictable outcome she would have had if she would have fought Hikaru Shida instead of Chris Statlander, if you will. So yeah, Hikaru Shida, she's not injured. She's actually fine. The only thing is, like I said, I think something's going on. Like So her commitment may have interfered, and that's why they wrote her out the way they did, using the street fight as an excuse. But apparently they didn't count on Hikaru Shida basically correcting them and exposing the truth about, hey, my status is not injured status. I'm still competing, but I'm doing it here in Japan right now, and I have other commitments as well. So again, hopefully Tony Khan gets in contact with her. He reads this tweet, finds out about it, reads it, gets in contact with her, and corrects this. And then on Dynamite, they correct course as well with the information. So that basically they're not looked at as a bunch of liars, because that's the last thing AEW needs. And speaking of AEW and Tony Khan, apparently one of his top talents, Maxwell Jacob Freeman, MJF, not just on camera, in storylines, but also legitimately, is being very frustrated with his status. MJ basically is telling Tony Khan, and many people have pretty much highlighted it as such, hey, he's pretty much telling Tony Khan, pay me more money if you want me to stay. Now, MJF is the person that I talked about in another video, where I mentioned, when I was talking about, what will happen when Kathleen Finch, officially really starts to take over. I mean, she's in the process of doing it right now, since she's been assigned by David Z, I'll put it that way, David Z. She's been put in charge of all this, and he's also going to be overseeing it as well. I mentioned that, I mentioned in one of those videos that one of the things she may not be a fan of, that, Tony Khan is not a fan of, is, talent coming out and doing interviews and saying things they're not supposed to say. In fact, it was the video where I talked about how AEW is stopping interviews from happening, and that these future interviews, can only be approved through HR. And that was because of a certain star coming out and saying things he shouldn't have said. And that star happened to be Maxwell J. Friedman. Because he went on he did an interview at the beginning of the year, and he mentioned his contract status and saying it was up in 2024. Tony Khan got wind of this and did not like that. Thus, that interview, along with other interviews that have happened before and afterwards, pretty much, I guess helped, Tony and his team make the decision that future interviews have to be approved by HR, because they don't want anything to be said in said interview by the wrestlers, men or women, that would basically expose them behind the scenes. They don't want any information getting out there. Like the status of somebody's contract and everything. But yeah, Maxwell, even though he's getting prominently featured and everything, has been in major feuds with some of the top talent they've had, is frustrated. And, obviously he wants to stay, but he also knows that if he's going to have that opportunity, what I'm trying to say is, he also knows that if he's going to get that opportunity to stay, he has to make it known that, hey, on camera, as part of a storyline, part of his character, and even outside of the ring in interviews, he has to make it clear that, hey, my contract status is up in 2024, and I know there's going to be other companies looking at me, especially one up in Connecticut. And, I don't blame MJF for doing this. I mean, everybody has said it best. This is he's a young guy. He's younger than me, obviously. He's in his early to mid-20s. But he's a guy that is a child prodigy growing up. And obviously, being a child prodigy growing up, he has a sense for business. So by having that sense for business, he knows exactly what he is doing. He knows exactly how to get, hopefully, what he wants by coming out 2 years, 3 years, a year and a half earlier than expected, telling the world, hey, this is when I'm going to possibly leave this company and head elsewhere or explore other options. He knows what he's doing, because the more he does that, in his mind, the more it's going to make Tony be like, well, I don't want to lose this guy. And, because I don't know what they're going to do with him up north, or I don't know what they're going to do with him in Nashville, Toronto with Impact. I don't want to lose this guy, so what do I do? And MJF's thought and point of view is the more he does this, the more it's going to make Tony come out and say, okay, fine, I'll give you what you want. I'll pay you more money to stay, sign you to a lucrative contract, probably the most lucrative in the company's history, and be done with, and just go from there and be done with it. So MJF's not a dumb guy. MJF's not a dumb guy. He's very smart. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing. I mean, right now the program he's got going on with Waldro, if you will, Waldro, I believe. That's how you pronounce it. Waldro. Yeah, Waldro. The storyline he's got going on with him, he knows what he's doing there. Because everybody knew this was going to happen, and MJF, from behind the scenes, knew this was going to happen. And from a wrestling business status, he realizes, hey, as young as I am, I'm already established. Everybody knows who the hell I am, but they don't know who this guy is. And if he beats the hell out of me at Double or Nothing, squashes me, turns me inside out, it's going to put him on the map. It's going to get him very noticed by everybody. And from a storyline perspective, it's going to let him be on his own. And he's going to be able to, go out and be that dominant force people expect him to be in AEW. So he's smart. Like I say, he's a smart businessman in knowing how to negotiate for a new contract for more money and more possible privileges or stipulations or whatever. And he's also a smart businessman when it comes to wrestling and knowing when it's time to put somebody else over, because he's already had it done to him several times, thanks to some of the best stars in the business today. So my prediction, though, is I believe MJF will stay with AEW. But here's the other reason why MJF is doing this. And he's probably not the only one. Here's why he and everybody else is doing this. They're doing it mainly for the fact that, they realize AEW's future is in doubt. This talk about AEW getting a new show, possibly a new reality-based show, but, that may not be, something that's in the cards just yet, well, at least as far as, the way people are, predicting it to be when it's all said and done. The future with TNT and TBS is in question because there's word going around, and you watch people like Clownfish, watch and listen to people like Clownfish TV and others. There's rumors and talk going around that a lot of the networks that are spread out might be, what's the word I'm looking for? Combined, consolidated, if you will, into smaller channels. There's word going around that TBS and TNT, I should say, could be consolidated into one. There's word going around that CNN and Headline News could be consolidated into one. Basically, David Zaglav's plan, along with the help of putting someone like Kathleen Finch in charge of all the networks, is to consolidate and basically merge a lot of networks together into one network or two, and go from there. Basically reduce the 40 probably in half to maybe 20, if not 15. That's by consolidating them, merging them together to cut that in half to 20 to 15 channels instead of 40. Saves money. You still get the programs that you've known to get on them currently as they are, but now you just have to check them out all in one place. And that could potentially happen. Not saying it will, but that is the rumor and the talks going around currently right now. And how does that affect AEW? Well, if AEW is going to be in the position of being sold to advertisers as a potential moneymaker for them when it comes to Warner Media under the Warner Brothers Discovery banner, the way it affects them is advertisers may or may not want to support them, especially if they're going to be just, they're just going to be essentially on one network. what's working for them right now is they're on two different networks under the Warner banner. So they ended up on one. Yeah, some advertisers might say, okay, we'll support it, but not everybody. And you also got to look at it this way. Kathleen Finch and David Zaslav and their team, they'll do research and everything. They'll do research on past advertisers for AEW, and there's a good chance that they could look at the past research and see the controversy that happened that one time with the Nick Gage Chris Jericho match, and that won't, and that could be something that affects AEW not significantly, but in a way that may not be attractive to the kind of advertisers that Kathleen Finch and David Zaslav under the Warner Bros. Discovery banner wants for AEW as part of their networks, or at least one of their networks. So as far as this pertains to Maxwell and any other talent whose contracts are up around that time, if not a little afterwards, if not before, is they don't know what the future is going to hold in store for the company. For all they know, after it's all said and done, after the initial contract right now with Warner Media is up at the end of next year, going into 2024, for all they know, that could be it for this company, AEW as a whole. And, basically that could, cause what I'm trying to say. Okay, let me correct course here. Okay. Good course. What I'm trying to say is the reason I bring all this up and how it pertains to Maxwell and other talents whose contracts are up at that time, if not a bit afterwards or even before, is because the initial contract with Warner Media is up at the end of next year into 2020 and into 2024, which means if they want to opt out for one more year, on the networks, they could do that because I think that's part of the contract. But even so, the initial contract is up at the end of next year. So they got plenty of time between now and then to sell this company as part of the Warner Media package, as part of the Turner Network packages to advertisers in the meantime. And whether or not advertisers, accept them, take them on board as sponsors and everything, that's totally up to whoever agrees to do so. But the reason, again, this pertains to Maxwell's situation, this pertains to anybody else's similar situation, contractual-wise, is because of the fact that they know there's a good chance that, Warner Media, after the initial contract is up, even though they might get some advertisers for the company and it shows for the next year or so, they may say, we're done. You're going to have to find another house to live in because there's no more room here, or we don't have any more need of you. And whether or not that means, hopefully by that time, that means, they have a deal with HBO Max and that's the new home they go to, or that means they got to go to another network down the line. That's up in the air. It's totally up in the air. But the point I'm getting at is a lot of these talents are bringing all the contractual status up because, to say it straight up, but hopefully with no messing up here, the future for AEW right now, people will say it looks bright, it's great, nothing to worry about. But to a lot of the talents that have been there, done that, or have seen this, or heard about it, let me rewind. Okay. What I'm trying to say is that for the talent that have been there, done that, have heard about it, and seen it with their own eyes as fans themselves at one point, the situation is very eerily identical to what happened with WCW. Now, the only difference is WCW was owned by Turner, and Time Warner and AOL Time Warner, after the merger, wanted nothing to do with them. They wanted them out because wrestling didn't fit the portfolio, if you will. AEW, on the other hand, is an independent wrestling company owned by Tony Kahn and the Kahn family, with Warner Media having a bit of a stake in it, maybe just by a bit, but not much. So a lot of people saying that even with that exception, they're not going to be in a similar situation as WCW was. However, the talent, the legends that were there when that went when that went down, back in 2001, and the talent that's right now on the roster as we speak, that had heard about it, had seen it with their own eye, had heard about it, as up and coming wrestlers back then, had seen it with their own eyes, and, and heard about it, seen it and heard it, I should say, as fans themselves. Again, the situation is very eerily similar, which is why a lot of them are now either, coming out and saying, well, this is when this is going to go on, or this is when my contract is up, and I might explore other options, or, I might go back to where I came from, and or I might go this place, or I might go to Japan, I might go to Mexico. They're saying all this now because, again, they're not sure about the future. Now, I know some people will say that that's not going to be the case, and you're probably right. There's going to probably be nothing to worry about. But again, if you're Maxwell, if you're a Bryan Danielson, if you're a Chris Jericho, if you're a Daniel Garcia, if you're a tag team like the Acclaimed, you don't know what the future holds. You hear about what happened 20 plus years ago, like when you were still in diapers or you were in grade school or whatever, and you were a fan watching, and you saw what happened, and now you see something, and now you're seeing something similar potentially take place that you might experience for yourself, firsthand. Yeah, you have a lot to kind of be concerned about, and you might be wanting to renegotiate your contract for either a shorter term or more money for the potential extension that the company might have, and you want to be part of it. And Maxwell, he's no dummy. He knows he is a prominent featured person on the show. He knows basically that he basically knows in the long term. So I was about to think. Sorry for the pause that I was trying to think about what I was going to say, but he also knows for the long term, he's going to end up with that AEW World Championship. He knows this. He's going to have that AEW World title over his shoulder and around his waist before you know it, and before he knows it. And he wants to be part, and not only does he want to be, part of that, or part of that experience, like being one of the first, 5 to hold the belt, be the first 5 world champions in the company's history, but he wants to be a champion, world champion, TNT champion, going into the bright future that this company has. Because he knows that if he does have to negotiate and go up to Connecticut, he knows there's a good chance that, there's a 50-50 chance, if you will, now that he has a friend there that can, vouch for him, that there's a 50-50 chance, a slim 50-50, that he could retain who he is and be as he is in NXT, if NXT is still around, and on the main roster, Raw or SmackDown. He knows he could be, himself as he is now. But he also knows in that slim 50-50 chance that he could be switched. He could be changed. Like, he can come in as MJF, and we know who he is, and he could still do his catchphrase, but he could use it against heels, because they could decide, hey, this MJF guy, let's bring him in as a babyface, when he's a natural heel, and everybody that would see him come in as a babyface knows that. So, he's smart. He knows what's going on. He knows his future going up to Connecticut would be all right, but, like, the status of his character presentation would be in question, which is why he wants to stay in a company that he knows is going to let him be himself. And obviously has plans for him to be the 5th world champion in the company's history. It's just a matter of time of when and where. Or at least the 5th or 6th world champion, depending on what happens at Double or Nothing. But, yeah, he's no slouch when thinking about, okay, how can I make this benefit for me and an extension benefit for the company in the future. But yeah, apparently all he wants is more money, and hopefully Tony Khan doesn't make the same mistake he made with Cody and say, you know what, you want more money, you want to be part of the future of this company, because we know we're going to be around for a long time on the networks, on the Turner networks and all that, the Warner Media networks. You know what, you got it. And Hopefully he gets it. Hopefully he gets it. But again, he's not a dummy. He sees what's going on. He's paying attention to this whole merger situation along with everybody else. He's not sure what the future is going to hold after the initial network partnership contract is up at the end of next year. So he is basically working out some kind of a negotiation right now so that if the company does remain, he will be set, he will be fine, he won't have to worry about anything. And hopefully other wrestlers on the roster will do something similar if they want to be part of the future. But right now, I think what a lot of those wrestlers are doing, unlike MJF, is they're going to wait. They're going to wait till they get more information to see whether or not the show remains, or if the show has to move elsewhere. Then that is when you're going to see a lot of men and women on the roster start thinking to themselves, okay, maybe it's time for us to leave and go back to where we came from, or explore other options. But right now, that's neither here nor there. I just wanted to come on here and give you my thoughts on the whole MJF situation when it comes to AEW and his contract, as well as the situation with Hikaru Shida, as well as talk briefly on the WWE possibly finally going through with the Unification match on Smackdown this Friday on Fox. But let me know what your thoughts are. What are your thoughts on these 3 stories? Comment down below. Live chat during the premiere. Like the video. Super thanks are open and would be appreciated. The button is right there below when you watch the video after its premiere. Also, you can live chat during the premiere, and super chat and super stickers are open on that one as well. But again, guys, let me know what your thoughts are. Comment below, live chat during the premiere, and I am out.